Hi everyone, our goal today and in this video is to learn how to identify and write equations of perpendicular lines. So earlier we did parallel lines, now we're going to do perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are two lines in the same plane that intersect and form right angles. Those are those 90-degree angles. Those are what perpendicular lines are. And then non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if their slopes are negative reciprocals. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that negative reciprocals is also called opposite reciprocals. And that is a little bit more common to say that they're opposite reciprocals. Let's go a little bit of a refresher over what that means. They have a picture over here for us, and they're telling us that the slope in the first line is -2, and in the second line it's 1/2. Okay, so my original slope was -2. And my new slope was +1/2. The opposite, or negative, means we switch the sign. The sign used to be negative right here, and on the new one, it's a positive. And then reciprocal is a fraction that you flip upside down. So if I think of the number 2, remember that could be the same as 2/1. When I flip that upside down, I get 1/2. Okay, so if I told you that my original slope was +1/3, my perpendicular slope would be, instead of positive, it would be negative. And then I take 1/3 and I flip it upside down and get 3/1. And then I reduce that. 3/1 is just the same as -3. If my original slope, for example, was -4/5, my perpendicular slope would have to be positive, and then flip the 5 to the top and the 4 to the bottom. And I don't have to write the positive in front of it, so the best answer is the slope would be 5/4. All right, so determine which of the lines, if any, are parallel or perpendicular. In this first equation, I can see that my slope of this is a 4 because it's the number in front of the x. So that's the important thing I need to know from that equation. When I get to the next equation, though, it's not in that y=4 form, so I need to do the math to get this into slope-intercept form, that form where I have just y all by itself. So I subtracted x from both sides, and now I'm going to divide everything by 4. I get y equals, okay, remember that if it's -x, that's the same as -1x. So I'm going to rewrite this as -1/4 x plus 3/4. In my last equation, I'm still trying to get y by itself. So I'll add 2x to both sides. And then I'm going to divide both sides by -8, and that's everything needs to be divided by that -8. 2 over -8, or -2/8 is my slope. 16 over -8, that's just a -2. I'm going to reduce that. -2/8 is the same as -1/4 x. And plus -2 I could just write as -2. Okay, so now I have to see if any of them are parallel. That was the first thing in my directions. Parallel lines have the same slope. So let's see, my slope in the first one was 4. In the second one, my slope is -1/4. And in line C, my slope is, again, negative 1/4. This is why reducing fractions is super important. If I hadn't reduced it, I might not have noticed that negative 2/8 is the same thing as the slope for line B. Okay, so I just discovered that lines B and C are parallel because they have the same slope. Okay, I'm going to abbreviate because they have the same slope. Okay. And now I'm looking for perpendicular lines, and remember that perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So if I was looking for the opposite reciprocal of the number 4, okay, that's positive, so the opposite reciprocal should be negative. And 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1, so flip that over, I get negative 1/4. And I see that both line B and C have that opposite reciprocal slope. So lines, I'm going to say line A is perpendicular to lines B and C because its slope is the opposite reciprocal of their slope. Okay, in your packet, skip ahead a little bit and find this you try problem. So you're going to skip one example, then try this you try. It's just like what we did. Okay, so on this problem, hopefully you were able to find that the slope of the first line, line A, was negative 1/3. And then on both line B and on line C, the slope was 3. Okay, so that means that lines B and C are parallel because they have the same slope, and that line A is perpendicular to lines B and C because its slope is the opposite reciprocal of theirs. Okay, here's something that is only a little bit new. Okay, we are once again being given a point. So here's the xy coordinates of a point, so we can use those as x1, y1. And we're given a line just like we were with the parallel. The only thing that's different today is this says we're looking for a line that's perpendicular to the line y equals a half x plus 3. So the thing I need to find in order to use my point slope form, remember point slope form is that y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. If I went to plug stuff in here right now, I have y minus, my y coordinate is 1. And I've also got x minus, my x coordinate, negative 3. Remember that minus a negative is adding. The only thing I'm missing is the slope. So this is telling me the slope. Now when it was parallel, I just took that 1/2 and wrote it down. Okay, but remember it says perpendicular, so I need to make my slope the opposite reciprocal. So positive 1/2, that becomes negative. Flip the fraction upside down, I get 2 over 1, which is just the same as negative 2. So I plug negative 2 in for my slope, and then I can distribute and add 1 to both sides, and I get that y equals negative 2x minus 5. Okay? The only new thing in all of this that we did was this step right here where we found the perpendicular slope. Everything else is review. So here's a practice problem for you to try. They give you the point, so you have your x1 and y1, and they give you the equation. And your goal really is to find the perpendicular slope from that equation and then plug that into point slope form. The slope on this one was -3. So my new slope has to be positive. And remember, -3 is -3/1. Flip it upside down, it's 1/3. So my slope is 1/3. Next step is to distribute it. I get y minus 5 equals 1/3 x plus, don't freak out, 1/3 of 3 just means one piece out of three pieces. It's just one. Add 5 to both sides, and you should have gotten that y equals 1/3 x plus 6. Last problem to try is right here. It's the same process that we've just been going through. Okay, so hopefully you noticed that the slope was 4, which we could make into 4/1. So the new slope needs the opposite sign, so it's negative, and flip 4/1 over to be 1/4. Plug that new slope in here, the y coordinate in for y sub 1, the x coordinate in for x sub 1. Distribute -1/4 times -4, remember, is a +1. Okay, I subtracted 3 from both sides and ended up with y equals -1/4 x minus 2. So this is my equation of a line that's perpendicular to this line, and it will go through this point.